The Persian heartland today lies in ruin. After years of sanction and a devastating spring 2026 war, the Islamic Republic's infrastructure is fractured. In Washington and Jerusalem, a new debate has flared. Not whether to topple Tehran's political regime, that's done to a very high level, but what comes next? Some hawks are dusting of a time-worn playbook. The 1982 Union plan, which argued Israel's security depends on balkanizing its neighbor. Suddenly, pundits are asking again, should the ancient Persian state be cleaved into uh, ethnic mini-states? Proponents openly call for Iran's fragmentation along ethnic lines akin to former Yugoslavia clubs. And even a Jerusalem Post editorial urged Washington to embrace Iran's dismemberment by promising protection to break away Kurdish, Sunni, and Bluish regions. This briefing, I mean, uh, we are here to argue exactly the opposite. Our thesis is that allowing Iran to splendor would be Israel and the West's greatest security blunder, a unified secular Iran. Even one that is reformed and de escalated would be an ally, not an enemy. By contrast, trading that hope for a fractured Iran means trading one deliberate state for a constellation of nuclear armed warlords. In short, fracturing Iran is a geopolitical dirty bomb with no countermeasures. I mean, the idea that Israel's security lies in breaking up large neighbors into it's not new. In 1982, Israeli journalist Udit Yinon published a notorious article calling for fragmentation of the Arab world into ethnic mini states. But his analysis was rooted in the Cold War world of mass armies and tank warfare, not today's nuclear age. Yunon's vision assumed that slicing a continent of hostile armies into I mean, I mean, into tribal fractures would no longer challenge Israel. That made to resistance of sense for a conventional trade then, but it's a societal now. It's a societal plan now. Iran today is not a 1988 style army that can be shattered on a battlefield. It's a nuclear threshold power with a harder, deeply dispersed program. So actually, it was, but now it's much more. I mean, much more weaker. It's weaker. It's much weaker. And even before 2026 strikes, Western experts acknowledged that Iran had already reached nuclear threshold. As the Arms Control Association noted, Tehran had already reached the threshold. Enough weapons grade uranium for a bomb within days and up to 10 bombs within weeks. In fact, Iran was sitting at a threshold for over a year under IAEA monitoring, meaning a weapon could be built very quickly once political control slipped. A post-war CIA review confirmed that Iran retains the material to rebuild its nuclear political program and promptly move back to the threshold. In short, I found Iran is still essentially nuclear capable. It cannot simply be balkanized like a conquered 1982 Iraqi division. So, worse, Iran's core population is far more cohesive than many Middle Eastern countries. As the Persian Azeri majority, Iran is more ethnically coherent than almost any other regional state. The ruling elite itself remains dominated by Azeris and also Persian, and the IRGC and army still hold major cities. In short, there is no natural Syria or Libya style break line already to stop. The idea that today's Iranian state is a house of cards of ethnic minorities is a dangerous, outdated fantasy. The Yunan plan's logic was built for a bygone era of multi-front tank battles. It fails against a decentralized nuclear program. Iran's centrifuges are buried in mountains, dispersed across provinces, and any fissile uh, material is stockpiled in multiple cities. Balkanizing a country with such an asset means handing them to anyone who grabs them, not solving the problem. In modern context, the Yunan doctrine is the best irrelevant and the worst little. I mean, if Iran's central government collapses, there is no master switch to disarm the program. Israeli planners must face the terrifying possibility that IRGC commanders, or I would say terrorists, or local militias simply seize Natanz, Fordo, and other facilities. The United States Nuclear Threat Initiative warned that even after crashing airstrikes, dealing with leftover nuclear materials is a nightmare. There is a real need to make sure that the elements of a clear nuclear program are the last thing that would get loose and fall into the hands of unknown actors. Notes from, not former Under Secretary Katrina Hertzberg, Russler, and another expert asked bluntly after a war, quote, how will we have any confidence that buried uranium hasn't been stolen or sold on the black market? All evidence says that Iran's Revolutionary Guard won't peacefully hand over the keys. The same NTI experts agree that Islamic Republic is unlikely to fully fall and that an IRGC-controlled Iran would reflexively keep the bomb program as a bargaining chip. In fact, Iran's new leadership has already shown contempt for Western overtures, having survived the wars that the United States and Israel can through it. IRGC commanders are in no mood to trust any deal. In practice, if Tehran falls, the only way to neutralize bomb is by uh, subduing each regional warlord who tries to claim it. Imagine Israel facing 5 or 6 loosely allied warlords in Azerbaijan, Kurdistan, Fars, Baluchistan, and etc., each sitting on weapons grade uranium. None can be deterred by classic nuclear logic because none is a functioning state. In a fragmented Iran, every vault could become a warlord garrison. Like Natanz and Forozish plans, once under the tight IAEA locks would become prizes in local power struggles. U.S. analysts emphasizes that after all, even 60% of enriched uranium could have been secretly moved or hidden, leaving no way to certify them. All materials accounted to. In short, by blowing up Tehran, we could multiply the problem. Uh, we can blow up all the IRGC commanders, and we shall. But breaking Iran will not solve the problem. And instead of one adversary with hierarchy, we have a constellation of unprotected answers, each with high yield fissile cores. This is the worst possible trade. One deterrable regime for many undeterrable mini nuke militias. And if Iran fractures, the first shockwave hits the Turkish frontier. Ankara had made it clear it will not tolerate waves of new refugees. As Washington Institute observers, even Turkey want to see Iran's nuclear wings clipped. It does not wish to see the regime's collapse. We wish to see the regime's collapse, but here's not the point. We are talking about what will happen if Iran breaks. So, Turkish strategists vividly recall the Syrian catastrophe. Chaos in Iran could be fresh refugee flows around toward Turkey territory, evoking the millions of Syrian refugees who arrived post 2011, a burden that already harmed President Erdogan domestic standing. In short, Balkanization means another migrant crisis on Turkey's doorstep. And it will also continue to the United States of America, also to the Europe. It's not all of them will not stay in Turkey. It's impossible. They will immigrate. The population of Iran is 19 million. And so 19 million population, after a breaking a fragmented Iran, they will immigrate to many parts of the world. And so this means a global crisis, not only the crisis that could hamper Turkey's economy, but Turkey's economy and politics are already fragile, right? Erdogan knows that anywhere from hundreds of thousands to millions of Iranians and Afghans fleeing through Iran could seek sanctuary in the West. So the focus is that simply social unrest. Revived anti-immigrant movements and a crippling drag on Turkey's NATO rule. But I mean, if Iran descends into chaos, even Erdogan, no friend of the EU, would struggle to win re-election under this strain. For him, I'm saying. I'm not a fan of it. The West anchor in the region cannot afford to face a new serious disaster next door. The refugee tsunami would ripple through Europe and NATO's eastern flank with no filter. Shattered Iran would also open the Persian Gulf and also Indian Ocean to Chinese ambition. That's the point we need to think about. Uh, I mean, very clearly, Beijing already has an eye on Iran's Baluchistan coastline. Consider the geography. Pakistan, China built port at Gwadar sits just 170 kilometers east of Iran, Chabahar port. An expert notes that these two ports display Chinese-Indian rivalry in the Arabian Sea. Gwadar, China was intended to give China access to the Indian Ocean. So, while the Chabahar, India's aim to bypass. If Iran breaks apart and its Baluch region goes under China's of sway, Beijing would inherit the entire macron cost. So, in effect, a puppet Balochistan would hand China Iran's only direct Indian Ocean outlet. Chabahar is today Iran's only oceanic port. China couldn't project power directly into the Arabian Sea and monitor Hormuz traffic with ease and indirect energy flows. The Indian Ocean would gain a new lesson post at Gwadar on the straits. This matters for Western strategy. US and allied naval operations would face permanent Chinese pressure from both the east, Gwadar, and the north, Iranian Balochistan. In short, splitting Iran gave China a key strategic coastline and strategic depth that even Iran's sham government never had. Furthermore, China would deepen its Belt and Road footprint. Already, China financed Gwadar and expanding its a dual-use base. A vessel Balochistan could quickly host a Chinese naval facility on the Gulf of Oman. Iran's fracture would mean one less counterweight to Beijing in Southeast Asia. Even India, which poured billions into developing Chabahar as counter strategy, would be outflanked, right? Like the loss of Iranian territory has converted the Persian Gulf from a zone to diversified influence into a Chinese-dominated sea corridor. This is a strategic gift to Beijing that the United States and Israel access cannot afford to give away. But this is not the end of the history. A power vacuum inside Iran would unleash Islamic terrorists never seen before. ISIS-Khorasan already operates on Iran's eastern flank. As the Polish OSW think tank notes, ISIS-K, which means ISIS-Khorasan, has proven it can strike far beyond Afghanistan. In recent years, it carried out attacks in Iran, Turkey, and other countries, showing it's no longer confined to Kabul. Imagine this network surging through an ancient and insecure Iran. A collapsed state would leave the entire Afghanistan-Iran border open. ISIS-K and Al-Qaeda's Afghan branch could flood the west, linking up with any sympathetic militias inside Iran. Historically, Saudi Jarrett has eyed on Iran as both a refuge and also a target. After 9/11, for example, Taliban and even some Al-Qaeda operatives slipped into Iran under the guise of the refuge. In 2026, chaos, well-armed ISIS-K factions could sweep through the Iranian Balochistan and Khorasan province, then fan out across the Levant, Middle East. This would create a direct ISIS route from Afghanistan to Mediterranean for the first time. Likewise, Al-Qaeda still in Pakistan and Afghanistan would find it trivial to infiltrate Western Asia. Iran's solution would turn into a jihadist no man's land. Western cities from Istanbul to Marseille could face terror plots launched via the new corridor. In sum, fracturing Iran does not just remove a threat, it creates an uncontrolled terrorist highway. So the stakes here couldn't be higher. A unified post-theocratic Iran um, abiding by, let's say, the Cyrus Accord, something like the Abraham Accord, would likely choose a different path. Normalizing ties with Israel to secure uh, normalizing ties with Israel and the West to secure investment, honoring or renegotiating its nuclear obligations, and perhaps even joining new regional frameworks. Like I said, an expanded Abraham Accord, like the Cyrus Accord. All those possibilities are destroyed if Iran uh, splinters. Conversely, a balkanized Iran guarantees a failed state archipelago, a nuclear Pandora's box, and a terror incubator in one. So the opportunity cost is colossal. I mean, by clinging to 1980s balkanization dogma, strategists risk throwing away a future ally and uh, trading it for a century of chaos. Iran's fundamentalist regime might have been a fool, and it is a fool. It's the world's greatest terror funding center, but its successor fragments would be far worse. We would effectively be saying to this, we prefer permanent insecurity over a chance at peace. The calculation is guaranteed to haunt global security for generations.